Hello. Yes, hello, and welcome to another edition of Tech Bugs and Rock and Roll, where nobody else has turned up and it's just me. So, um, do with that information what you will. Dylan is currently driving to Whitby because I understand it is Goth weekend in Whitby, um, which is something to do with it being Halloween. And Whitby is where the Demeter um, made landfall in Dracula by Bram Stoker. And so every Halloween, a load of goths descend on Whitby and hang around doing goth things together. Um, and obviously, Dylan, not goth, but I believe some of Dylan friends may be goth. I don't know. But there is also some kind of music thing happening, which is um, apparently like the kind of thing that's likely to appeal to goth people. I don't really understand the whole goth thing. I will be honest. So if any goths or goth understanders are here, then please do say hello in the chat. Um, does this get bigger? Can I do this? This is just anyway. There. So trying something new. They've got a new thing that overlays the comments on the stream, and so I've turned that on. Oh, there we go. That's better. Now I can see me full screen as well because I don't need to do anything else at the moment. Um, so yes, we have the chat showing up down at the bottom there. And hello, Christian Schabbetsberger 5426. Hello, Hex Beach, and the Jeffable and Marie. And so, yeah, I'm just going to try and fill an hour of your time with bobbins. What I thought we might do, actually, was I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to just go scrolling through. Yes, Energy 164, you can chat and it will show up on the screen. It's very exciting. No, I'm going to open up my Feedly and go through Alvin Ashcraft's Morning Dew, which for some reason shows up in my um, feeds as Dewdrop, and I've got 5 of these that I haven't read because I have. Oh, so and also Eli. So the reason Eli not here, Eli possibly not even in chat. Are you in chat, Eli? Hello. Eli not feeling well, and so Eli probably curled up in bed and trying to do stuff, trying to get better. Yes, C.S. Haig, uh, or Shaykh, possibly. I don't know. It is sort of like one of those jumbotrons, but very much smaller than a jumbotron. So yes, and I just got back from Utrecht, where I was. I flew there on Monday. I did a talk there on Tuesday, and then I flew back yesterday. Very flying visit, but I did get to go to the Techorama speakers dinner on Tuesday evening, even though I was not speaking at Techorama. So thank you, Techorama, for the very nice food and free drinks and stuff. They're going to like come after me now with lawyers and stuff and go give us money. Um, but no, and so I haven't been reading my daily things. If you're not familiar with Alvin Ashcraft's Morning Dew, it's a kind of newsletter for programmers. It's sort of dev news. It's a bit of a .NET focus, but it does talk about web development, JavaScript, and all this sort of stuff. And obviously, because the world is the world, in recent times, it's become an awful lot about artificial intelligence. And so I thought, absent, if anyone wants to ask questions about anything, yay, Jonathan Shannon, hello. If anyone wants to ask questions, then please do sort of shout out, and I will try and answer the questions if I can notice them. But how am I going to notice the questions? He suddenly realised. If I go to StreamYard on my phone, like this, and I enter the studio here, and then I will Yep, no, we'll allow that, and then I'm going to enter the studio. So I'm here
Right now,
like that.
I'm on the
On the
stage.
stage.
And then we're going to turn the volume right down on the phone. And then, oh God, now I can hear myself on my headphones. That's really weird. So, Hex Beach knows goths into All About Eve. And
Actually, if I do that, there we go. So if I mute the mic and do that, and then I can switch back to here, and then I believe I can see the comments coming through on here, but only kind of just a bit. Well, we'll see how it goes. Um, oh, sorry, do you want me to turn the camera back on so you can continue crossing your eyes trying to get 3D render? Let's let's see if we can do that, actually. I'm not sure I can because you have to. And then we do that. And yeah, there we go. 3D render. Look down the. No, that's not going to work. So yeah, anyway, go away. I left the studio on that one now. Right, so yes, I will try and notice questions and ping back across and so on. But yes. Uh, so yeah, all about Eve. Hague is usually another way of spelling Hague and is very common in Yorkshire. Okay, I live in Yorkshire. I'm a Yorkshireman now. Well, not a Yorkshireman, but a Yorkshire person. Um, yes. So anyway, let's do the whole. So we're going to do picture in picture, and we're going to um, share my screen, and we go, yep. And we'll share that Microsoft Edge tab, and we'll do don't share the tab audio because that's probably actually no, do share the tab audio. You never know. And then we can do that. Okay. And so yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to go down here like this. So what have we got? I'm not going to look at everything, but Sync Fusion now has an AI coding assistant that supports Angular, .NET MAUI. There's a new .NET Rocks about GitHub Spec Kit, which actually is probably worth listening to. I mean, .NET Rocks is always worth listening to, but that one in particular could be interesting. I haven't looked at GitHub Spec Kit yet. I've started using something called OpenSpec with Claude Code, and it's a very useful way of making Claude remember a little bit more context and all that sort of thing. And so it doesn't sort of completely forget what you're doing between sessions, or if you fill up the context window, if you're on like limited Claude, for like the $20 a month subscription, then using OpenSpec, it helps you kind of break the thing down into steps. So it's basically going, don't do vibe coding, because vibe coding is bad. Vibe coding doesn't work, but coding with an AI assistant does actually work quite well. So, and I believe GitHub Spec Kit does something similar, so that's probably worth a listen. And then we've got an AI toolkit for GitHub Copilot prompt first agent development, whatever that means. Introducing Agent AQ, any agent, anywhere you are. See, these are the top links. Never lose your AI agent's train of thought and put your AI to the test with Microsoft Extensions Evaluation. Web development, Electron version 39 is out, probably with AI included. But no, okay, the Microsoft Azure outage shows the harsh reality of cloud failures. Yes, there was an Azure outage yesterday, and there was an Amazon outage, AWS outage, both in US East. And I'm kind of wondering if there's something going on in the sort of northeastern, the Virginia part of the United States, if there's some kind of reality distortion field. But in both instances, it was DNS, because it's always DNS, unless it's DNS. but no, essentially it is always DNS. Somebody updates something, DNS stops working, and in the case of AWS, like um, 8,000 and something sites went offline. So yes, I do like it though when you get sort of the links. I don't think Alvin puts sort of any particular um, thought into how he orders the links. I'm sure they just go in order. But yes, the Microsoft Azure outage shows the harsh reality of cloud failures. Use Azure! Microsoft Azure reports cloud outage disrupting global customers, including Alaska Airlines. That's a weirdly specific. That reminds me of there's a thing. I don't know if this is a very British thing. People from countries that what is so it's like it's Rene. Hey Rene, how you doing? If it's not DNS, it's BGP. I was just in your country, Rene, but I would have stopped by, but I did not have time. Um, so yes, uh, what was I talking about? No, why Alaska Airlines? Why are you specifically homing in um, disrupted operations for customers worldwide, including Alaska Airlines, Xbox users, and Microsoft 365 subscribers? Um, we just had a panicked kind of the person who noticed that Azure was down was kind of like, don't log out of the app because our app uses Azure B2C Entra for its authentication, and so if we logged out, we wouldn't be able to log back in again until it came back online. So it was Azure front door issues resulting in a loss of availability of some services. Um, but no, that's weird. Why Alaska? Like Northwest native. GeekWire reporter Lisa Stifler is a Northwest native. See, Northwest, I mean, that's Northwest United States, obviously. And most of the time, Northwest, they're talking about like the Pacific Northwest, and what they actually mean is Washington State and Seattle, and maybe the top of Oregon. Does that count as the Pacific Northwest? But obviously, the most northwestern state of the United States is Alaska because it's basically the North Pole and the west bit of the North Pole. The Dutch buses were affected yesterday, yes, Jonathan, because I was there and I did not try and take any buses, but they certainly were having problems. But no, kind of it's the cloud. I mean, hundreds, maybe thousands of people were affected. Why pick on Alaska Airlines in particular? Is it like who ChatGPT give me a list of people who were affected by the Azure outage in alphabetical order, and Alaska Airlines was the first one that was kind of any size or something. Um, but yes, Murray, the joke is indeed about the close proximity of DC and Virginia, because Dylan is not here to tap the sign, and so I could go a little bit politics. But no, including Alaska. So it reminds me of, and people from other countries tell me if your place does this as well, but the British news will often report like major international disasters. I mean, we're talking like the earthquakes and the volcanoes and the tsunamis and the airline incidents and all these sorts of things where literally tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people die, and they will finish that including 12 Britons, and you're just kind of the bigger the first number gets, the stupider the second number seems. It's kind of like, oh, we wouldn't even be having this on the 10 o'clock news on BBC One, except that 3 Britons were included in the people who died when Australia was blown up by an alien laser or something. So yes. Anyway, back to scrolling. Clean code using smart and dumb components in Angular. GitHub new GitHub Copilot capabilities for C++ developers. Upgrade MSVC refactor. WPF chart performance benchmark. Raymond Chen. So I've been following Alvin Ashcroft's. This has been my sort of go-to rather than following all these different sites individually. I just have a subscription in my Feedly to Alvin Ashcroft's site. Used to be Chris Alcock as well, but he has stopped doing that as far as I can tell. So now it's just this one. Um, but I cannot remember a day when Raymond Chen did not have a blog post in uh, in Alvin Ashcraft's thing. The guy, I'm pretty sure his job at Microsoft, because he does work at Microsoft, he is. Uh, Raymond has been involved in the evolution of Windows for more than 30 years. In 2003, he began a website known as The Old New Thing, which has grown in popularity. The website spawned a book. He occasionally appears on the Windows Dev Docs Twitter account to tell stories which convey no useful information. But yeah, look, it's just every sort of work day he's posting something. It is complete, and it's about all sorts of different subjects as well. Quite a lot of it tends to be about like low-level Windows stuff and kernels and what to do when you have a crash in the runtime control flow guard check, which I don't even know what that means, to be honest with you. But yeah, lots of Windows SDK and that sort of thing. So yes. I occasionally go, I'm going to start blogging again, and then I'll do a blog post, and then that's it for another 18 months. Um, so yes, .NET specific, Grammarly in .NET, real-time grammar checking, context-aware suggestions, and processing a billion words daily, caching the distributed isolator. What's new in .NET 10? Most interest. Let's take a look at what's new in .NET 10, because I think that's out next week or the week after. It's whenever the .NET conf thing is. Let's .NET 10 release date. The 11th to the 13th is .NET Conf 2025, which is online, and if you're not signed up, then you should go and sign up for it if you're a .NET developer. If you're not a .NET developer, you should become a .NET developer. Not that it matters now. I'm writing code in all sorts of things. Zig, Objective-C, Kotlin, Java, Python, C, C++, it's all just in there. But no, what's new in .NET 10? Actually, you can't see that tab now, can you? Share this tab instead. There we go. So yes, extension members. Oh no, I am quite excited about this. So this is something that we've been asking for ages. So we can now create a class. In C#, you can have a static class, and then you can have a static method. And if you put this before the first parameter of the method, then that method shows up as though it were a method on that type, the objects of that parameter type. But it only works with methods, so you couldn't have extension properties or extension events and this sort of thing. And now we actually have a proper extensions keyword that we can put in. So we have extension here, and we can add extension properties, and we can add extension methods, but in a kind of more specific way. And we can define static members as well. So we can, if you wanted there to be a datetime dot something, we could define an additional method on datetime or datetime offset, and then that would show up as though it were just there. So that is extremely cool. Also, and maybe don't do this because it's potentially really nasty, but you could also do some terrible things with a weak reference dictionary. So, which is kind of like how property extensions work in WPF and XAML type things. What do they call attached properties? But yes, if you have the object reference, you can have a weak reference dictionary, and you can keep additional values in there. You can go, as long as this object exists, keep this other thing over here in this dictionary. When that object gets garbage collected, that dictionary can safely lose its reference to it, and so you can actually add like fields or whatever to an existing object type. So that will be for that. Rene says he will not become a .NET developer. That's absolutely fair. Rene is some kind of Java type developer person thing, which is absolutely 100% valid. Jonathan C. Carter for .NET 10 coming soon too. So yes, Carter is cool. If you ever saw Nancy for .NET or Sinatra for Ruby, which was the original inspiration, Carter is kind of like it leans in more to the minimal API thing and just provides a lot of really nice, helpful syntactic sugar and some clever stuff over the top of the ASP.NET Core's built-in minimal API stuff. So yeah, if you're into building APIs, I do recommend checking out Carter and Carter for .NET 10. Um, an Aberdeenshire newspaper regularly uses the headline format "Local golf course owner something something about USA politics." I love that. That is fantastic. I would absolutely do that. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Um, Alaskan Airlines is often a launching customer for Azure, so maybe that's why Microsoft should have applied all tools to keep them available as an example. Oh, okay, so right, yeah, it's like one of their flagship customers. Yes. Um, I so Marie says the area west of the Cascades in Oregon and Washington is the Pacific Northwest. Okay. I generally sort of you start in the middle of the United States and you move northwest, and if it's raining, you found it. That's the Pacific Northwest. Gentle, nice gentle rain, but rain regardless of the season, rain regardless of the temperature. It can be lovely and warm, but if it's gently raining, that's probably the Pacific Northwest. Um, Reminds me of that one British guy I saw memes about when Tibet had a revolution. Yes, exactly. You know, that's the thing. The whole of Tibet has come out and started revolting against their leader, including this one British dude. Because yeah, why not? So yes, no, we have extension members. We have null conditional assignment. Um, oh right, yes. So yeah, now so we've had null sort of if this object is not null, then call this method. Or if this object is not null, then get this property value. But if it is null, then just the thing that we got will be null. We now have assignment as well, and so you can say like account question mark dot balance equals 0 or a negative number in my case. Um, and yes, that will work as well, which is a nice sort of bit of it just saves a couple of lines of if statement and stuff. Named and optional parameters in expression trees. There are no limitations for expression trees, and you can use the following code without errors. The follow get value or default with a result of t value and t error, and a t value default value is where get or set x. Oh, okay. So yeah, we can have we can create expression trees with optional parameters. So when you're passing like an expression to link or something like that, you can have an optional parameter in the expression signature. Validation support in minimal APIs using data annotations, which is nice. You can add interceptors namespaces in your project, and that does something. We can do skip validation. Oh, skip validation I like. There was something I was using, and I would have liked to be able to put a skip validation thing on there because it kept trying to. That was it. I was using the same method for same model class for using for creating a new instance of something and then having an actual instance of it, and it was like the string ID, and the string ID was supposed to be a GUID, and so it had a validator on it to say that it was supposed to be a GUID. But if it was a new one, it wasn't there because it hadn't been assigned yet because it was auto-generated by the Postgres database, and so it's going to like, no, skip the validation on this in the event of a post, which is really. ASP.NET Core now supports returning server-sent events using the typed results.server-sent-events API. SSE. I'm slightly thrown that that's new, to be honest. I'm amazed that that was not a thing that already existed. But anyway, so yeah, we now have a way of sending server-sent events from ASP.NET Core, which is brilliant, fantastic. Because I do actually have some code that uses server-sent events that I was hoping to host on ASP.NET Core sometime soon. So that would definitely help. Blazor, you can now have a not found page, um, but you can use a separate page. How is this different? Router app assembly found and then not found down there. Oh, okay. So yes, whatever you wanted on the not found page, you had to put all of that statically, kind of locally, inside a not found element um, in the router sort of HTML in your app page or in your router control, and now you can just specify it as a type, and it will just use that as a, so you can just have a fully defined page. I suppose the hack to that before would have been to put the not found page content into a root, into a component, but it would have pulled a whole lot of your JavaScript and your CSS and everything as well. EF Core now has left join and right join operators. Um, and uh, yeah, okay, so we now have a dot left join and a dot right join method. If you're one of these people like me who prefers using the kind of method syntax rather than the weird from X in students join D in departments on SQL um, in your C# code, because I don't like it. It's weird. I know what they were trying to do, but it's weird. It reminds me of when I was a little wet behind the ears new developer, and there was a thing called ESQLC made by a company called Infomix. And what it basically did was um, you put SQL statements or SQL statements into your C code, surrounded by dollars, and you would say select blah from thing into, and then specify some variables. And then there was a pre-compiler that would generate the frankly horrendous CISAM code. If you haven't written CISAM code in C and then tried to get the values out of a CISAM file, because that's what it is. They call it a database, but it's basically a file, and copy them into kind of malloc chars and all that sort of. Yeah, ESQLC made life a lot easier for creating Unix applications that talked to an Infomix database. Afternoon, Surly Dev. Carter uses Fluent validation built in, Jonathan points out, which is uh, it's sort of preferable to annotations. It allows you to be a lot more explicit. Honestly, though, um, Fluent validation, things like automapper, all this sort of stuff, I like writing a validate method somewhere and calling it, and you know having a standard way to report them for sure, and like problem details and all that sort of thing. But whenever somebody tries to abstract away validation and those sorts of things, it makes it very difficult to work out where to put breakpoints if you're trying to debug behavior. It makes it sort of it's difficult to like inject the logger for the endpoint that you're using into Fluent validation and get it to log errors to the right. You know what I mean? All that sort of thing. Yeah, software architecture is hard. What else? We have JSON. So EF Core fully supports the new JSON type. Um, that's interesting. New JSON data type in what? Uh, Share this tab instead. New JSON data in SQL Server, of course. So yes, SQL Server now supports JSON, um, because if you've been using PostgreSQL for um, when did PostgreSQL get JSON data type? Postgres support for JSON is 10 years old, and that was 3 years ago. So yes. So Postgres has had it for 13 years. And the NPG SQL thing has actually supported that. So yeah. But anyway, you go away and we'll come back to, oh, I closed the tab that I was sharing and everything went completely sideways. Now we have to do this again. Let's go back to what's new in .NET 10. This has just become the what's new in .NET 10 stream. So yeah, we've got, you can store objects as JSON using the toJSON method. Hopefully it integrates with system text JSON as well, so you can have like a JSON object or a JSON element or something. Oh, and then there's this thing as well, isn't there, where you can just put your entire application into a single C# file. This is the culmination of something that Microsoft have been trying to do since Node.js launched. So the thing with Node.js is that you can write a JavaScript. You can have a single JavaScript file. If you don't need Express and you don't need, and you just want something that's going to create an HTTP server. So the very, very first thing I ever wrote for in .NET Core, and this was actually when it was Project K version 0.5, and I wrote a thing, and it was just one endpoint. Didn't matter what you did get. It was essentially app.map get asterisk. And all it would do is no JSON or headers or any of this sort of stuff. It just returned a GUID. It returned a UUID with the hyphens, and that went back to JavaScript and then the Node application that was really good at everything except generating GUIDs or UUIDs. Would use it, and I took a Node application from like 100 requests a second, or a single Node instance from 100 requests a second to 10,000 requests a second, by having a Project K microservice that just generated GUIDs. But obviously, it still had to have a project.json and a whole build step and all this sort of stuff. And now in .NET 10 and C# 14, you can actually just create a C# file, and then you can do .NET run that C# file. And so that is as simple as Node.js. You're not going to be able to do very much with it. But wait for .NET 11 and C# 15 or whenever it happens, and they will come up with ways that you can sort of hash include a NuGet file or something. I don't know about that. So let's go back to here. Share this tab instead. What's happening here in the chat? So yes, Marie says I'm right about the rain. That is exactly the area that is the Pacific Northwest. I lived in Seattle. I didn't. Marie lived in Seattle for a couple of decades, and having grown up somewhere that it rains with actual raindrops, called that precipitation Seattling. That's a really yes, because it is. It's not like rain. It's just like there's water in the air. It's barely. It's like sauntering casually downwards. It doesn't really matter if it gets there, and you can be out in what feels like rain in Seattle, and the ground's dry because it's the middle of summer and the ground's quite warm, and the rain is literally not coming down fast enough to make it to the ground before it evaporates and goes back up to the clouds again. It's just very self-defeating. Carter has a validate method on the request that calls the validate. Oh, that's nice. I haven't looked at Carter for a while. I should have another look and see what it's up to. And Renee says Java introduced the same sort of thing. Yes. So you can do like Java run something.java. This is it. All the other languages want to be Node.js because they think that what people like about Node.js is the simplicity. And it's not. What people like about Node.js is that it's the same language they use to write things in the browser. It's the JavaScript developers, front-end developers who've learned JavaScript in the context of adding functionality to pages and doing all that sort of stuff. yeah, they can go and be back-end developers as well, and um, write Node.js code and do horrible, horrible things like the whole kind of server-side rendering, which you can now do with React and Vue and whatever the hell else, Nuxt and Next and blah blah blah. Um, and yes, so Marie pointing out that also in the northwest, the winter variant where the ground is wet and nobody knows why. That's because it's actually raining backwards in the winter. The ground, it's water coming up out of the ground and then just um, sneaking back up into the clouds and hoping nobody notices. That didn't make any sense at all. Um, and yes, it is a shame, Rene, that the name JavaScript is not available for Java that can be run like a script. So, it turns out that all the stuff at the start of the AI, at the start of the Dewdrop, to do with AI wasn't all the AI. This is the other thing. I remember when web development was always the longest section, and then Windows development sort of has been ticking along, and so people don't really develop just for Windows anymore. It's cross-platform. .NET's always sort of had a few bits and pieces in there. Oh, hang on. The C Sharp Advent Calendar 2025. If you want to be one of the 24 blog posty things in the C Sharp Advent Calendar for 2025, then you can now request a slot by going to www.csadvent.christmas. There's a .christmas top-level domain. I did not know that there was a .christmas top-level domain. And it's the whole thing. It's not like Xmas. It's .christmas. So yes, that will make people happy about that. So the Cursor team are talking about building a fast frontier model with RL. Um, RL being reinforcement learning. Oh yes, of course, reinforcement learning. So Composer is a mixture of experts, language models supporting long context generation and understanding, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Edge AI for beginners, getting started with Foundry Local. If you do want to run AI models locally, then Foundry is a surprisingly easy way to do it. And actually, it's quite cool. It's got a command line mode, but you can also include Foundry packages in your .NET application, and it lets you run stuff locally. It's quite cool. Connecting the dot, how MCP Copilot Vision. What does the JetBrains survey tell us about AI? Probably that half of people hate it and the other half are using it and being frustrated with it. Cursor 2.0 arrives with a multi-agent interface. Python 3.4 is now available on Azure App Service for Linux. See, I actually use Python quite a lot these days, and I can't upgrade past Python 3.12 because there are so many things out there that just, I don't know if it was superstition or whatever, but or if maybe something was introduced in Python 3.13, and they went, oh no, we don't like it, we can't, it's too difficult. And now Python 3.14 is out, which is lovely and everything. And actually, I believe the global interpreter lock has now gone away. Am I right in thinking that? Python 3.14 GIL. Python 3.14 and the end of the GIL. So if you don't know Python at all, it has this thing called the global interpreter lock, because Python was never really designed to be threading, but you can do asynchronous code and all this sort of stuff, but it actually, in Python, only one thread is executing bytecode at any given time. So, and as this page here is saying, on the one hand, this has several advantages, including making it easy to perform thread and memory management, avoiding race conditions, and integrating Python with C and C++ libraries. But it does mean that if you're using like Flask to build a web server, then the way to scale it to make use of multiple cores on a multi-core computer, which is all of them, is to run the same application lots of times and load balance across them. And so the global interpreter lock it sort of kept things simple. I mean, you didn't need any other mutexes to lock variables and stuff because you knew that only one thing was going to be changing a variable's value or adding or items to a list or removing items from a list or whatever. And so now, Python 3.14, the global interpreter lock, I believe there is a setting you can have to turn it back on, or it might be a build. So here we go. If you're a Linux user, the only way, oh, right. So if you want Python 3.14 without the global interpreter lock, and you're on Linux, you have to build it yourself. If you're on Windows or Mac OS, you can download it using the official installers from the Python website. And there's a checkbox somewhere in the installer. But if you're on Linux, you have to build it yourself. And then there'll be a flag for the building. I mean, Linux, if you're using Linux, you should be capable of building things yourself from the command line and, with CMake and whatever else these days. Once the download is finished. So yes, there you go. Anyway, there is a global interpreter lock free version of Python 3.14, which, by the way, why is it not called Python as in like the Greek letter pi? And why did I only just... I'm sure that everyone's made that joke, and I'm absolutely the last one to the party. I've just stopped sharing the screen again. I would like to thank everybody who has stuck with me through this frankly bizarre... that's the one. Let's share that. And what did we go? Hex Beach. So Jonathan Channon has come in and shilled Carter, and now he's buggered off again. So yes, Hexbeach says their Mythic Beasts server has been more reliable than cloud services such as AWS. Check back with me soon on an episode, hopefully, where I've got somebody talking to me. But I have kicking around and looking for something to do. I have a Raspberry Pi 5 with, I think, 4 gigs of RAM, and I have a 2018 Mac Mini, which is an Intel Mac Mini, which is basically useless for anything now. But my plan is to put the Linux... so yes, Talos Linux, which is essentially, it's a very, very bare bones Linux that is just designed for running Kubernetes. And you can install it. You can install a control plane. You can install it as a worker plane. You can have both of those things on the same machine if you just want a single node. But I've got it into my head that what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the Raspberry Pi be the control plane, and I'm going to use the Mac Mini as the worker plane, and then I will have a proper sort of Kubernetes cluster. And then I'll use a Cloudflare tunnel to expose that to the internet as various URLs, and then that will be all my stuff running locally. But yes, Mythic Beasts. If you don't know who Mythic Beasts are, they do Raspberry Pi hosting. So they're using the kind of compute modules, which they can stack into. You can get like 32 or 64 or 128 of them into a single 1U rack with just a fan blowing air across it. And so if you're running kind of really, really simple workloads like a website that you want, but you want it to be accessible from anywhere and so on, Mythic Beast is actually definitely worth a look. Surly Dev, has everyone seen the AWS clone dot and then it got cut off? Jeffable had a client object to their use of Xmas rather than Christmas in a URL. Newfangled nonsense. But yes, there is a whole linguistic thing. But yes, Python 3.14, return of the semaphore. Indeed, but that's what semaphores are for. We need semaphores. Bonsai data center, yes. How to pass JSON in Python. Okay. Design, DevOps, and methodology. How many pillars of observability can you fit on the head of a pin? Hey, Charity is So this is from Charity Majors, who is one of the people. I think she's CEO of Honeycomb, which is my favorite observability company because I know quite a lot of the people who work there and their friends. But also they do observability really well. They kind of reinvented how we do observability, and it leans heavily on the distributed trace instead of just logging and metrics. Um, and apparently someone said to Charity, is profiling a pillar? And that somebody had told them that profiling was the fourth pillar of observability now. Um, and they said that they thought profiling was a great tool, but they don't know if it quite rises to the level of pillar. And they asked, what did Charity think? And what Charity thinks is there are no pillars. The pillars are a fucking lie. Dude, I think the language of pillars does a lot of work to keep good engineers trapped inside a mental model from the 1980s, paying outrageous sums of money for tooling that can't keep up with the chaos and complexity of modern systems. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it will have more swearing that I will have to kind of vocally bleep and stuff, but that's on charity.wtf blog post from today. Generally, sort of charity. If you're into observability and that whole kind of keeping an eye on your systems in production, uh, then Charity is definitely worth a read, and go and subscribe to her blog. Uh, and if you're not into observability and monitoring your systems in production, then I hope that that is because you're not a software developer. Done that thing where my voice is going now. So yes, um, that was a good mouth click. That's not coming off on the thing with auto noise fix. Mobile app Dart and Flutter, streams in Flutter, embed video thing. And then let's go to podcasts. This is technically a podcast, or it would be if I ever uploaded the audio to Spotify. Um, the Jules extension for Gemini CLI. Gemini CLI, I've used Gemini. I have Gemini Pro. I use Claude mostly because I've got Claude Max, and it would be silly not to use it. But I do use Gemini sometime. So what does Jules do for Gemini? It accelerates creative coding workflows by enabling you to delegate tasks to Jules while you. Oh, interesting. So Jules is an autonomous sidekick that works in the background. This is from Google, so it almost certainly does only work with Gemini. Um, but no, so Jules appears to be an attempt to work around the problem where you can't just let an AI agent go off and do things entirely by itself because it has a tendency to rm minus r slash and things like that. And so Jules works in a virtual machine, clones your repo in a virtual machine, does things to it, opens a pull request, all without actually having any kind of access to your real machine or anything permanent. And then you can just go, hey, can you fix this bug? And it goes off and it does it. So that's quite cool. And now there's an extension for Gemini CLI that lets you do that. Demo time remote control for live coding presentations. That I am interested in. Let's share this time tab instead. Use the URL to your demo time server. Enable API in demo time settings. Okay, so that. Oh, right, demo time. Never stress about live coding again. Excuse me, I need to have a coughing fit. Hello, I'm back from having a coughing fit. I'm going to check out live coding again. Sorry, never stress about live coding again. This looks good. So that we can just make it highlight code. We can make it run code. We can make it shows. Okay. So script every coding step in advance. Editor integration in Visual Studio Code. Typo-proof live demos. Terminal automation. Works in VS Code, Cursor, and Windsurf. GitHub Copilot integration slides. That looks quite interesting. I'm going to have a proper look at that, and I will report back in a future episode. So let's go back to here and share this tab instead. What was I about to say? Something. It's gone. Oh no, wait. It was somebody said something in here. Yes, Hex Beach. So Energy 164 is saying that demo time rocks, and they used it in their NDC Oslo session. And the Hex Beacher says Clippy would never have done RM-R without permission. Which reminds me, has anyone seen like Microsoft's new artificially intelligent blob that changes shape? And it's like Microsoft have been trying to do this since Melinda Gates invented Bob and the kind of the weird Microsoft, like a wrapper over Windows that made it look like your study. It was really odd. And yeah, what's new Microsoft AI blob? Miko, here it is. So yes, Microsoft's Miko is a Clippy for the AI era here on TechCrunch. Oh, it's a contraction of Microsoft Copilot. But yeah, here we go. There's a video and everything. I don't think. So yes, it's if you've seen the Pixar movie about souls, it looks like one of them. But yes, it's an amorphous blob. And apparently if you click it enough times, it will turn into Clippy. But you can also talk to it out loud. It's definitely not designed to improve engagement and get you spending all your time talking to an artificial intelligence, so definitely not. Right, anyway. Yes, you're watching YouTube on YouTube. So yes, congratulations Microsoft on finally getting back to Clippy. If you click it enough times, it turns into Clippy and goes, "Hello, I'm Clippy." So yes, it looks like you're writing a letter. It looks like you're wasting your life talking to an artificial intelligence. Claude Desktop just added a thing where if Claude is active, you can press caps lock and start talking to it, and then press caps lock again, and then it stops. And that is the first useful thing I've seen anybody use the caps lock key for since Half-Life used it for jump or something. So yes, my throat has gone. I have talked for 55 minutes and my throat has gone and I need to stop talking and go and have a cup of tea. So yes, thank you very much to everybody who stuck with me through this solo episode. I hope that was kind of, we found some fun stuff and we had some interesting chats and we learned that it rains really strangely in the Pacific Northwest. So yes, next week will be a bit mental because Dylan and Eli and I will all be in Malmo at Uridev, and there will be we're performing at the Uridev attendee party as line breakers on the Thursday evening. But there is a possibility that we will find a corner and do a stream from Uridev. If not, then we will see you the following week. So yes, thank you very much, everyone. And just one last thing, Mark Miller has something similar in the AI coding extension that he is building on CodeRush. So go and check that out. But yes, apart from that, take care of yourselves and each other, and I will see you hopefully with more people, hopefully next week, if not the week after. Bye bye.